Today, you're going to learn 3 DIY video hacks to help you capture beautiful cinematic videos. Maybe your church is working with a limited budget, and that's okay because each of these 3 strategies are completely free, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to perform these DIY video techniques, even if you're just getting started with video.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Tools, the show where in 10 minutes or less, you're going to get a dose of tips and tactics to help your church share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills, joined as always by the boss man, Brady Shearer.
Alex, when I was a media director at a church, one of my prime responsibilities, my biggest roles was creating videos. And I had a Canon T3i back in the day, which to me was the most powerful and capable camera that I ever could have imagined. It did shallow depth of field video. It looked cinematic. It was amazing. But there were a lot of things that I couldn't do because I simply could not afford them. So things like really smooth movement with a Steadicam or a gimbal. Couldn't afford that.
Right.
You know, anything that was underwater, couldn't do that.
Nope.
Anything that had extravagant lighting setups, couldn't do that. All I had is my camera. That's about it. So what I learned through all of that time, and even now, we have a lot of pro gear, but even now, we don't have all the gear that we want, is that sometimes you've got to hack your way through and do it yourself, as it were, to create a look that is not technically being done the way that it should, but almost completely gets the same result.
Look, where there's a will, there is a way. And I learned this in a very similar way to the way you learned this. I wasn't working with video within church. I was working with video in a bit of a different context, for a little portal into a former life of mine. I used to film a lot of skateboard films. We'll link those below for sure.
Wow.
But I was working on a lot of low budget kind of do-it-yourself film projects. And these 3 tips that we're going to talk about today, I did all of them because sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to get the shot when you have no budget, never mind a little budget. And what's funny about this is we have a bit more of a budget here at the office now. And like you said, we have tons of pro gear, but just last week we did one of these do-it-yourself tips because you just got to do what you got to do.
You got to do it for the tape. And what's amazing about churches is that we are the kings and queens of DIY.
Oh, yeah.
You know, stage design, as an example. Like, what have we not done with Coroplast? Well, we can do the same things with video. We've got 3 strategies, 3 techniques for you. And the first is the DIY do-it-yourself gimbal.
You need it.
Gimbal takes your camera and holds it completely steady so that you can get beautiful cinematic, smooth shots. The movie Birdman was filmed almost entirely on a Steadicam, a gimbal that just always traveled smoothly. It looks like it's floating through the air. You know, we have the DJI Ronin and Ronin SM, one of the letters for the Ronin. Here, but sometimes when you're traveling, you don't want to bring this entire giant gimbal with you. So I was recently traveling through the States and I had my Ursa Mini Pro with me and I wanted to get a really nice smooth looking shot, but I didn't have my gimbal with me because I was traveling with carry-ons only. And so what I did to create a DIY gimbal is I attached an ultra wide lens to the Ursa Mini. I think it was a 16 millimeter Rokinon cinema lens. And I got in a car with my buddy. We were driving down these streets, downtown Milwaukee, going about 10 miles per hour with our hazards on. I rolled down the window all the way, and I held my camera out the window, and I slightly pointed it up to get a smooth tracking DIY gimbal shot of the downtown buildings in Milwaukee. And so there are a number of different things that you need to do to accomplish that technique. First, you need a wide lens. Because the wider the lens is, the less shake is going to be noticeable. If you're zoomed in, if you have a more telephoto lens or even a portrait lens like a 35 mil, a 50 mil, and an 85 mil, what's going to happen is all of the shakes, because it's not a gimbal, you're holding it inside of a car that is surely hitting some bumps, are going to be exaggerated. So you need the widest lens that you can possibly get. From there, you want to shoot with a high frame rate. So if your camera only goes up to 30, shoot at 30. If it goes up to 60, shoot at 60. If it goes up to 120, shoot at 120, because the shakes that are surely going to happen, if they're in slow motion, will again be less noticeable and more fixable in post when you apply Warp Stabilizer.
Our favorite tool.
Within Adobe Premiere Pro. It comes free within the interface, and it's very good at solving minimal shakes and bumps and turning your footage into what looks like perfectly smooth and stable shots.
Yeah.
So That's, is there anything? Oh, drive 10 miles or less, because if you drive fast, it won't work.
Right. We've done this multiple times with our big cinema cameras here. We've hung out of windows, hung out of sunroofs. I don't know if we've actually been on a vehicle while trying to do this, but we've done multiple versions of this with
We're not going to
vehicle.
incriminate ourselves.
Oh, our seatbelts are on every single time. But maybe you have a shot that you want to get inside your church building and you can't get a car inside your church building. What I used to do is I would make use of a longboard, which it just has a lot more stabilization than a skateboard. You could use a skateboard, but longboards have the smoother wheels. They're longer. You have kind of more room for air there. So your cameraman can be riding longboard, or you could kind of emulate a dolly and actually put your camera on the longboard, which is something I've done before. Yep. Our friend Jesse Driftwood, he uses his one wheel for this all the time. So there are all kinds of things with wheels that you can find and use. You probably already have to achieve this do-it-yourself gimbal look.
DIY technique number 2 is the make-it-yourself underwater housing. So this is the technique that we tried last week at Pro Church Tools. Not tried, succeeded with. We had a fish tank in the office that we had used for some ridiculous form of filming previously. I don't know how much fish tanks cost. I feel like you're a fish connoisseur. How much does this cost?
You could find it. This was like a 15-gallon tank. You could find it at a garage sale for $10.
Okay, so we had a fish tank. It was pretty dirty. So we cleaned one side of the tank.
About a lens size.
Like a circular lens size clean spot. And we went to Lake Ontario and we filmed a baptism scene for Story Tape. And I wanted to try something where we would shoot the baptism, but you could kind of see underwater as it was happening. And so I took the Ursa Mini Pro and I put it inside the fish tank. And then I put the fish tank in the water and I shot the underwater baptism scene. Yeah. And I was pretty fascinated by how this turned out, because at first you were holding the fish tank, Alex. Right. And the camera was in the fish tank, and I was holding the fish tank, and I was terrified. I was like, this fish tank's going to roll over. It's going to barrel roll. This camera is going to be gone. We got 3 of these cameras, but still, I don't want to lose one.
Right.
But what was weird is that the fish tank floated really easily.
Yeah, super well.
And the camera acted as a counterweight. It's a pretty heavy camera. It's not like a DSLR. Weighs about 10 pounds with a lens, let's say, or 5 pounds with a lens. And it weighed just enough to allow the fish tank to almost float.
It was God's providence as far as I'm concerned. You could literally be hands off, and it was just...
I was guiding it, like just barely holding it, and it worked extremely well. If you're watching this episode of Pro Church Tools, you're seeing kind of the final result, and you're seeing me in the water looking like a fool with the... looks like I'm just very reckless and careless, but it worked.
Well, these underwater shots, I mean, are really tough to get, and if you can nail one, it's unlike almost anything else you've ever seen, right? But even for smaller cameras, like the camera that your church is probably shooting with, whether it's like you mentioned, the Canon T3i or like a 5D Mark IV or something, underwater housing for a camera like that is like thousands of dollars. And so this is surely outside of most of our budgets.
Especially for like a specialty shot.
Yeah. And so this aquarium thing worked well for us. I've done this before with like Ziploc freezer bags, which
what?
I would not recommend. But because this was so successful, I will put my stamp of approval on this one. It works. It does come with a word of caution. If you try this and you wreck your camera, it's not on us, it's on you, but it worked for us.
Final strategy is the DIY cinematic single lighting technique. Lighting is going to be the single biggest contributor to the overall look of your videos. And that's why we always recommend shooting at golden hour. When we shot this baptism scene with the fish tank / underwater housing, it was at magic hour, golden hour in the evening. But one of the things that you can do if you are indoors to create cinematic lighting is find a single window and use that as your key light, but also your only light.
Right.
So I did this with a testimony video that I did at my church. We went into the subject's home. I'd never been there before. And I found this big light, this big window in their living room, and that's where we set up the testimony video. So I used it as the key light, lighting one side of our subject's face, and I didn't do anything with the other side because I wanted to create a dramatic, contrasty look, because I wanted to add more drama to the scene, more drama to the actual shot, because the story that we were telling was dramatic and serious. And so this is one of my favorite ways of lighting because it's cinematic. It is also 100% free and requires zero setup. It's the lazy man's single lighting video technique, and it creates beautiful cinematic looks.
Yeah, we do this all the time. We do it with photos as well in the office. I never use artificial light in the office. We just use, the single big window we have on the wall. And like you said, you kind of get that drama, and you can find a window just about anywhere. And whatever kind of building you're in, it's free. It's there for you. Turn off those artificial lights. Make use of this free natural light.
That'll do it for our crazy DIY video setups. The featured resource we wanted to highlight on this episode of Pro Church Tools is our brand new website, prochurchtools.com.
Yeah.
It is well overdue. We're extremely excited to share it with you. If you're not already on the email list, go to prochurchtools.com. Join Pro Church Nation, fill out your email, and start going through all of the playlists. We've got these free mini courses, content grouped together in playlists so you can learn a new skill to help your church seize the 167 and navigate this biggest communication shift in 500 years. That'll do it for this episode. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching this video. So now what you want to do is subscribe.
And after you've done that, what you want to do is
Smash it!
like.